Good morning. Thank you for joining us on NTV Today. My name is Gladys Gachanja and a happy Friday to you. Remember, this is your one-stop shop for all matters, current affairs, both within and without the country. And speaking of which, we have a lot of stories that we are following up for you. One is including Baringo Baringo South by-elections, which are currently ongoing. Voting started off earlier in the day. There's low voter turnout, but our reporter Gladys Gachanja will be joining us with more details on the same. Of course, we have been seeing the season of demolitions, and one of those that has been put or earmarked for demolitions is actually the Western Hotel. Well, a lot of communication about the same has been on social media, but to clarify some of what we have seen and heard is our anchor and reporter, that is Ken Mijungu, who is at the Western Hotel, and we shall be crossing over to him for more details of the same. And those High Court has, of course, as you know, nullified Governor Martin Wambora's election, and he moved to the Court of Appeal. Our reporter Vincent Odur is following up on the same. But for now, let's start off with that Baringo South by-election that is ongoing. Gladys Gachanja, how is it looking in the morning? There was reports of low voter turnout. Has that improved?
Well, Gladys, it has started off to a very low voter turnout, and this has been highlighted by the IEBC this morning, with the chairman of the IEBC, the chairperson, Wafula Chebukati, being on the ground to witness this, and also the commissioner who we spoke with even yesterday since this process began, Professor Abdi Gulie, has also confirmed and is actually appealing to the people in Baringo South to really turn out and come out to the polling stations and vote. The turnout has not been quite encouraging, but we do believe that as the day goes on in the afternoon, maybe people are still reporting to work, they are still continuing with their daily chores, and so in the afternoon it is expected, or it is anticipated, that this will change. And so far we have been able to also see some of the key contenders in this race cast their ballots. In the morning we did see Charles Cameron cast his ballot at Marigat Primary School, and he says that he is confident that this process will continue properly. There were issues that have emerged also. Some of the biometric machines in some polling stations did have hiccups, but later on Wafula Chebukati addressed that and said that those machines had been replaced. There's also the concern about the transmission of these results, but the IBC remains firm that this was not a by-election that would require them to have live transmission. But to just go into the meat of this, we're also with one of the aspirants in this race, and we also spoke with Charles Cameron in the morning. We do have that recording with you in studio, but now we also are with Dr. Cynthia Kipchilat, who is also one of the contenders. You are yet to cast your ballot. Just tell us, what is the problem, and what is your feeling towards the low voter turnout that is being witnessed on this D-Day for you?
Thank you very much. I've been going round since morning and checking in a number of polling stations. It is actually a low turnout, and I haven't got the reasons. It looks like most people have gone to do their activities, daily chores, and it is my hope that they will turn out a little later. We've sent out messages that people need to exercise their democratic right, and I'm hoping that they will turn out. Yes. And
maybe going by the statistics of this constituency, rather, you have about 30,000, more than 30,000 registered voters according to the IEBC. And when do you see this process coming to an end, and what is the likelihood of maybe the winner being announced? I know you're not in the IEBC, but how, with this turnout, do you believe that maybe by the end of today we would be knowing who is the winner of this by-election?
Yes, I think by the end of today, by the close of business that IEBC has set, I think we should have a clear winner. What is happening is, I know, in as much as the low turnout is there, I believe that at the end of the day, we will have completed the process, and we will have
We apologize for that technical hitch, but we shall be keeping tabs on that Baringo South by-election. Our reporter Bridget Ngana following up on the same. But just to give you a tidbit of what's going on, voting started early in the morning. There was a report of low voter turnout, and as Bridget Ngana is saying, that is seeming to be improving by the hour. But of course, we shall be following up on the same. And the IBC chairman, that is Wafula Chebukati, is on the ground overseeing the same. And of course, we shall be definitely following up on what he has to say in as far as that process is concerned. But I am told we actually had spoken to him earlier on, and this is what he had to say.
In fact, if we talk about transmission, our elections are electronic to the extent of verification of voters, which is ongoing. The results from the voting, you cast your ballot paper, it's paper. It's about paper results. So the results will be physically counted, the forms will be filled, the results will be displayed here, and the same result is displayed at the tallying center. So when you talk about transmission is just a path. So technically, in terms of the service provider, if transmission is not going to happen, the results will be the same, and they are as credible as they can be. So that's just one small path of which doesn't affect the final outcome. I've been briefed by the county election manager that the team working on security has confirmed that everything is okay. I'm not aware of any security impediments to this exercise. But of course, if you have any information, please pass it over, and then it will be acted upon.
The concern is that up until now, perhaps the turn-up is not as we expected, but we are hoping that people are doing their daily routine, their daily shows in the morning session, and as usual, Kenyans will come at the 11th hour, and so we expect that the number of people turning up to pick up, as we go towards the closing hour.
Listening into the IBC chair, Wafula Chebukati, and of course, Abdi Guliye, one of the IBC commissioners who are overseeing the Baringo South by-election. As we speak, we'll be bringing you more detail from Baringo South as and when we get it. But for now, let's cross over to the Court of Appeal, where Governor Martin Wambora, whose election had been nullified by the High Court, has actually been upheld by the Court of Appeal. Let's listen in. Supporters of Governor Martin Wambora celebrating his win after the Court of Appeal upheld his election as governor of Embu. Remember, Governor Martin Wambora has seen the inside of court more than once, and it looks like this time he actually came out as a winner. And also, those are the times he's always come out as a winner. But for this one, it was one of those where the High Court had actually nullified his election last year, but then again the Court of Appeal has upheld his win. Well, we shall be hearing his comments and of course more reactions from that court ruling from the Court of Appeal later on in our subsequent bulletins. But as you can see, he's a very elated governor who has been on the corridors of justice for the last couple of months, trying to make sure that his election in 2017 is upheld. The High Court had nullified it, and he moved to the Court of Appeal, and it looks like it has finally bore fruit, and he has been upheld as the governor of Embu. That is Martin Wambora. Again, live pictures there coming from the Court of Appeal where Embu Governor Martin Wambora has survived an election petition. The Court of Appeal has overturned a High Court decision that nullified Embu Governor Martin Wambora's 2017 election. On Friday, Justice Fatuma Sichale ruled that Wambora was validly elected. So his supporters are celebrating this ruling. It has been many weeks on the corridors of justice. And as you can see, they are celebrating that win. And that is after Embu Governor Martin Wambora survived an election petition. Our reporter Vincent Oduor is actually at the Court of Appeal, and he'll be giving us more details about that ruling by the Court of Appeal actually upholding the election of Governor Martin Wambora, that is Embu's governor, after the High Court had earlier nullified the same. And we shall be getting that information from Vincent as and when he is ready for us. Something else that's going on today is in as far as the demolitions are concerned, and the Western Hotel is one of those buildings that has been earmarked for demolition, but a lot of controversy is surrounding that particular building. And our anchor here at NTV and reporter, that is Ken Mijungu, now joins us from the Western Hotel to give us an idea of exactly what part of the hotel is being brought down, if any at all. Ken?
Right, thank you very much, Gladys. A very good morning to you, and of course it's a good morning for us right here along Langata Road. We are actually on the flyover located just at the intersection of Wilson Airport. We are also just next to Western Hotel, and right behind us, Gladys, is Langata Road Primary School, a school full of controversy. If I take you back to 2015, Langata Road Primary School, that is just behind me, was full of controversy, and for different reasons. What you see is the field of Langata Road Primary School. There was an attempt to grab on this land back in 2015 when Charity Ngilu was still the CS of lands. Brought a lot of controversy. We covered this a lot. There was demonstration organized by the civil society led by Boni Mwangi, and eventually this field was restored back to the school. And right now the fence that was pulled down by the pupils then has been re-erected, and we have even a signpost right by the fence showing this field belongs to Langata Road Primary School. And of course that controversy ended, and now we're digging into another controversy, Gladys, and this is the controversy that is now brewing next to Langata Road Primary School, but regarding this hotel that has been associated with the Deputy President William Ruto, which he has not denied ownership of the hotel. However, I'd like just to tell you the controversy. Yesterday there was a fake post from Nairobi County that allegedly indicated that Western Hotel was going to come down because it's built on public land. However, we have since learned a few facts, Gladys, that actually the County of Nairobi is not targeting to bring down Western Hotel, and this is because of two reasons. One, the County of Nairobi concerns itself with public land. If they have to go after any kind of property, it has to be a public property, and we have established that Western Hotel is not built on public property. However, yesterday we spoke to the county and specifically the governor. When we saw that fake post, one reason we wanted to talk to him was because we wanted to establish if at all that letter was indeed from the county, and they denied. They said it's a fake letter. Then we asked about Western Hotel, and he told me that they don't target Western Hotel because of their foresaid reason. However, they are going to send surveyors here, Gladys, such that if they find any part of Western Hotel, same thing that happened to Oshuel Center in Parklands, if they find that any part of the hotel is encroaching on public land, which is Langata Road Primary School, then that part will have to go down. However, they will not target the hotel because, one, they don't want to bring the economy of the country down, and secondly, because this is not sitting on public property. So they'll bring surveyors next to on this land just next to Langata Road Primary School, adjacent to Western Hotel. Then when they establish there's any part of the hotel that is lying on the public land, then it will have to come down. Whether it's just the fence, whether it's the rooms and the spa and anything, it will have to come down. But specifically, Gladys, they're not targeting Western Hotel, has been shared across the social media and different platforms. However, there is another thing that we would like to talk about, Gladys. Just on my right, that is the Wilson Airport. Very interestingly, there's been a lot of controversy that has been brewing between the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority and Western Hotel. The claims were that the hotel was built on the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority land. Now that the county government says it's upon them, if they feel that the Western Hotel sits on their land, then it's upon them to go to court to reclaim their land. But as for now, it's none of the business of the county to touch Western Hotel or anything. So the fake post we saw yesterday that was alleging that Gladys was actually called out for that, it's actually fake. However, now it's the prerogative of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority that owns airports in this country, that runs airports under Kenya Airports Authority, to see if at all this land belongs to them. Then they institute the normal due process, court process, so that they can begin the recovery process, Gladys. So for now, that's what's happening along Langata Road. Specifically, we have learned that that was a fake post and it's not specifically being targeted, but as I have explained, if at all the surveyors show that any part of the public land was encroached into either by the parking or anything, then it will be definitely targeted. And just like Oshawa Center happened, it will happen at Weston. Gladys?
Ken Mijungu, before I let you go, you just mentioned that the Civil Aviation Authority had claimed the land that Weston is on is actually public land. And I think the same was actually put across by the Kenya Airports Authority. So kindly clarify, is Weston Hotel on public land?
It's not clear yet, because this is a private property, which will only mean that it's built on private land, because otherwise you will not take public property and put your private property. But that has happened in this country. There's a lot of private property, and at the center of it all right now is the Ruaraka land scandal, which is another topic, and probably will try during the course of this broadcast to even head to Ruaraka primary school and try and talk about that. But what happens is, if they find that it's on public land, then they should produce documents. But the fact that it has been built there, it probably means it's sitting on private land. Now, how public land changed hands to become private land is what needs to be investigated, because as much as we know right now, all indications are that is private land, unless the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority can prove otherwise. If they prove otherwise, that this land was acquired from public property and then they put private property on it, then they'll have to move in with the normal due process and recover that land. But Gladys, as it says, the Wilson Airport is public property and it sits on public land. So what they just need to establish, because apart from Weston, there are quite a number of buildings around there, and if you can just see, even beyond Weston, even you can see several buildings on the airport, as has been claimed that this should be the airport. So it's not only this, it's also residential buildings that are just beyond even Langata Road Primary School, extending all the way behind Weston Hotel. So the only thing they need to do is to prove that indeed this was public land, and somewhere along the way it changed hands and became private, and that's why a private developer was able to acquire it and of course put such a prime property on it. So Gladys, from where I stand, unless Civil Aviation Authority, KAA, the government, which is in custody of all the documents pertaining to this land, can prove that it's public land, then that is when that process will be initiated. And obviously, like now everything that is happening in this country, the government is moving back to take over all public lands that have been taken illegally by private persons. That will happen. But as at now, it's a controversy that has been raging for many years. We reported extensively on the KCA controversy, KAA plus Western Hotel. But as we know currently, it's a private property sitting on private land, unless the Civil Aviation Authority can prove that this indeed is their land and it was acquired from the public and made private, and that's the reason a private developer put up that prime building. Gladys.
Thank you, Ken Mijungu, speaking to us from the Western Hotel, or at least near the Western Hotel, a hotel that has actually been in a lot of controversy in as far as if it's on public land or private land, or if it has even encroached into the nearby Langata Road Primary School. And of course, as he said, a lot needs to be investigated, a lot of questions to be answered, and we shall be following up the same and bringing you up to speed with the details as and when we receive them. Now to something that has been top of mind. During an interview with NTV, Chief Justice David Maraga asserted that globally there is a standard ratio of the national budget that is set aside for the judiciary. Let's listen in.
All over the world, the judiciary is given at least about 2.5% of the national budget. We're not asking that we be given that all the time. It all depends on the economy. But when you are talking about development and you are saying, look, we don't have money, we want to do this, development has got to be proportional. Development has to be proportional.
Well, the Chief Justice made that claim even as we hosted him on that exclusive interview right here on NTV, and it's something that has caught many people's attention. And Africa Check went ahead to actually make sure that they checked on the validity of that claim, and to help us actually try and debunk that claim is Vincent Ngethe, Deputy Kenya Editor at Africa Check. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
now, this is just one of the things we'll be looking into in as far as fact-checking some of the claims that have been made in the recent past.
Yes.
But for this one, he said the globally recommended funding for the judiciary is 2.5% of the national budget,
Yes.
which was essentially claiming that with the cutback, a lot had been taken away from him. Now, you went ahead to check, and your verdict was that was actually incorrect in
Yes.
as far as compared to other countries is concerned.
Yes.
And we would like to understand how exactly you got to it and the explanation behind it.
Okay. So what happened was after he made the claim and we verified it, the first thing we did was reach out to the judiciary. So we reached out to the judiciary to ask them the source of the figure, because we also noted that in the 2016-2017 State of the Judiciary and Administration of Justice report, the same figure was there. So when we reached out to them, after that we decided to look for other sources and to talk to experts who could tell us something about this figure. And we reached out to a number of sources and documents. One of the first things we did was look at how much the judiciary has actually been getting from the national budget. So from 2014, 2015 to now, from 2014 to around 2017, they've been getting around 17.5 billion shillings total. And before last year, they were getting around 4 billion in development. So around 13 billion in recurrent, that means salaries, expenses and everything, and around 4 billion in development. So last year, what happened was the total figure they got was around 1.55 billion. But what happened was 1.499 billion was put down as appropriations in aid. What is that? That's the money that a place like a government institution like the judiciary receives and is allowed to keep for its own operations. So it could be licenses, fees, fines, all manner of things. So they're allowed to keep that money. The only money they got from Treasury was 50 million shillings. And so given that in previous years they've been getting 4 billion, you can see that there is quite a big drop.
Of a discrepancy.
Yeah.
So he had actually mentioned that they were getting less than 0.%.
Well, he didn't do that. What we did was we went to the annual budget figures ourselves. So what we did, we went to the Appropriations Act, where the budget is, and we can find out how much the judiciary gets. And then we also, because we were looking for the budget early in the year, because during the year you get supplementary budgets and the estimates get revised, but we wanted the budget as of budget day. So we got the figures quoted in budget speeches because that's what we wanted. So for the past 5 years, so like we know, for example, total expenditure last year was 2.5566 trillion. And so that 0.57%, we get it from the 14.46 billion as a fraction of this 2.5 trillion. That's where you get 0.57%, which is what the judiciary got. And so from there, because now we knew how much the judiciary is getting, we wanted to know if indeed there is a rule, a threshold for how much the judiciary should get. And one of the first places we looked was in a United Nations report from 2008. This report was authored by the Special Rapporteur for the Independence of Courts and Judges. In 2008, he was a gentleman called Leandro Despy. He was a Latin American man. And he wrote that, in this report, he wrote that, and I quote, "The budget of the judicial system usually accounts for between 2 and 6% of national budgets."
2 and 6%.
Yes. So in this 2008 report, what this report was about was a mission to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the Special Rapporteur had gone to the DRC to see how the courts were working, and he found that they were they found, and this was a big problem, because the money there, they were saying, was not enough. So this was what he laid down as the rule, that it should be between 2 and 6%. So we called that office, we contacted that office of the Special Rapporteur, and we asked them, is there indeed a rule? And we got a reply from a human rights officer in that office, a gentleman called Stefano Sensi, who told us that the only thing that office says is that Principle 7 of the Basic Principles on the Independence of the Judiciary says it is the duty of each member state to provide adequate resources to properly perform its functions. He went on to say, and I quote, "There are no clear internationally accepted standards in relation to the funding for the judiciary."
All right, so that's where the explanation came from. Experts saying that there's no global recommendation, and the level of funding depends on a country.
It depends on the country.
All right.
There was actually two other experts we spoke to. We spoke to an economist from the Bank of Italy called Giuliana Padumbo, and she writes reports for the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. This is a grouping of very wealthy countries and advanced economies. And she has written reports on the OECD about judiciary funding before. So we reached out to her and asked her, is there a rule for this? And she said there is no recommended budgetary allocation for the judiciary, which is a political decision within the government's discretion. International comparisons in this field are often too complicated given the broad differences among the systems, again, quoting her verbatim. Then we reached out to the Commonwealth Magistrates and Judges Association. So the Commonwealth is a very big grouping, and Kenya is a Commonwealth country, so this was relevant to us. And Dr. Karen Brewer, who is the Secretary General, replied to us, and she told us, and I quote, "As far as we are aware, there is no international standard in relation to the percentage of the national budget which needs to be allocated to the judiciary to ensure its proper functioning." However, she told us also about the principles that the Commonwealth Judges Association has. One of them is the Latimer House Principles, the Commonwealth Latimer House Principles on the accountability of and relationship between the 3 branches of government as of 2003. And Principle 4C says adequate resources should be provided for the judicial system to operate effectively without undue constraints which may hamper the independence sought.
Okay, so clearly where he was coming from is the fact that the budget cuts were going to affect the development as far as the judiciary is concerned. He talked about the courts that are under construction would have to be affected, and of course he talked about other services of the judiciary that were supposed to be going into the counties were going to be affected. Before we get off this, maybe just a bit of comparison in as far as how other countries fare in terms of the budgets that are given to them. You touched and mentioned earlier there was an indicator that the poorer the country, the more allocation there is to the judiciary.
Yes. What we did, we went to a database that has been established by the Council of Europe. So this is called the Council of the Efficiency of Justice in the Council of Europe. And what they have done is they have surveyed all the member countries of the Council of Europe. There's more than 40 of them. And what they found was that for the leading economies of Europe, you know, like the UK, France, and so on, the percentage that is allocated to the judiciary from the national budget is like 0.3, you know, 0.37%, 0.3%, 0.4%. And the poorer you got in Europe, so when you went down to countries like Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, then it got over 1%. When we looked at the statistics for South Africa also, we found that they are spending 1.5%, which is more than what Kenya is spending given the trend. So the thing is, if you look at those countries, what that tells us is that even the countries that have the finest legal systems in the world, apparently, they're not meeting the 2.5% criteria. But we have to keep in mind that these are very wealthy countries. So 0.3% of their budget is a lot of money. That we have to keep in mind.
All right, so fact-checking that claim by the CJ that the globally recommended funding for the judiciary is 2.5%, that was found not to be the case.
Yes.
And there's something else that's been headlining. Of course, we just came to the end of the World Youth Week. And one of the issues that has always come up with the youth is that unemployment is rampant. And there was a study that was done, and I think a lot of the media ran with it, saying that Kenya's unemployment rate is actually at 39.1%. Now, according to Africa Check and the research you did, that is actually incorrect. Educators.
Well, yeah, this was roiling for a while, and I think it's important for us to understand that when you have a situation like this, you had this came about after the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics released their survey. They had done the 2015-2016 Kenya Integrated Household Budget Survey, and part of the reports from that survey was the the Basic Labor Force Report, 2015-2016. And it was in that report that the KNBS said that the unemployment rate was 7.4%. Now, a lot of people were a bit critical of that figure, and they were pointing to other statistics. For example, that UNDP had said that the unemployment rate is 39.1%. And they were also saying that the International Labour Organization had said that Kenya's unemployment rate was 11.5%. So we decided to ask everybody who had produced a figure how they came by their figure. We started with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So what they did was this survey. And what did they do? They interviewed 24,000 households. You realize that the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics keeps these samples. They've segmented the country into samples. So whenever they need to do a census, they just go and do it. So they have 24,000 households. They successfully interviewed around 21,700. So that's a response rate of like 91.3%. Once they had all those responses, what they were able to find out was based on a questionnaire that they had. So when they asked this questionnaire, they were asking people, if you had worked at least 1 hour in the past 7 days for pay or profit, or held a job in those 7 days. They were also asked to identify whether their primary job and their secondary job. Do you have more than one occupation? If you had not worked during the past 7 days and you had no job at all, you were not getting money in anyhow, they were asked what steps they had taken in the previous 4 weeks to find a job or to start a business. And if you had worked at least 1 hour in the previous week, they were defined as being employed. If they were without work, available, and had actively looked for work in the 4 weeks before the survey, they were classified as unemployed. So this questionnaire went out to all these households, and that's where the responses come from. So based on that, they estimated that 25 million Kenyans were of working age. That means they were between the ages of 15 years and 64, right? And notice that already 15 years, that's a school-going population.
That's underage, yes.
Yeah. So, and they divided this group of the working age population into the employed, the unemployed, and the economically inactive. So who are the economically inactive? They are people who are sick, there are caregivers, there are people who are discouraged. They're just not looking for work. And so what they found was that there were 17.9 employed people, there were 1.4 unemployed people, using the definition that we spoke about, that you have to be available for work and you're looking, but you can't find something. And then there were economically inactive people of 5.6 million, right? So the reason they were able, then from this, once they had these numbers, obviously now we know the unemployed people and the employed. When you add the employed to the unemployed, so the 17 million plus the 1.4 million, you get around a 19 million labor force. So the unemployment rate is the unemployed people over the labor force. That's where they get the unemployed people. Okay. And so what they did then was, because remember that they took a sample, right? So to get the unemployed population, the number of people unemployed for the entire country, because remember they just took a sample, they now have to extrapolate this for the entire country. They used what they estimated the average unemployment rate for the entire country using what is called a confidence interval. So 95% confidence interval, which basically says that between the 7.4% is at the center of an interval, could be between 7.1 or 7.7 in there, and 95% means that if you sample 100 times, 95% of the time, it's going to be within that boundary. So these are things that are internationally done. And when we shared these figures with the ILO, they said that this is how generally these surveys are done. And the problem has been, what many people have been saying is that this unemployment rate does not reflect our situation, because when you lose a job in this country in the formal economy, you don't just sit. You get a side hustle, you do something, you bring in money somehow. And so somebody like that may not consider themselves professionally employed, but they're not idle either. And so in developing countries like this one, the unemployment rate is very low, right? For that reason. But that does not show the true picture. And so we spoke with KNBS, and they said that these are things that they will be looking at to see in future surveys. One of the other things they noted, because we asked them, was why they calculate the unemployment rate so infrequently, right? And so they told us that as of next year, they're going to look at doing annual labor force surveys and eventually quarterly labor force surveys.
All right. So the claim that Kenya's unemployment rate is 31.1% is incorrect, and the one that comes closer is 7.4%?
It's 7.4. Remember, 39.1%, that came from a UNDP report. And what happened there, because we looked at that figure, we asked UNDP, where did this figure come from? They told us we did not say unemployment is 39.1%. We said that unemployment is 9.2%, which is quite close to 7.4. What happened, however, they released a figure called the employment to population ratio, which is 60.9%. Now, what do you get if you subtract 60.9% from 100%? You get 39.1. So that is the unemployment to population ratio. But remember what I told you earlier. They're taking the unemployment as a percentage of the group that is 15 to 64. They're in high school, they're in university. Some people have, retired, they're happy. So there are people who are not looking for work, who are not working, but it's not because they can't find work. They're not ready for the job market. And so, that metric does not adequately capture the situation. You can't call it the unemployment rate.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So 39.1% grossly exaggerated, indeed, to say the least. And of course, 7.4% comes closer to how the unemployment rate in Kenya looks like.
Yes.
Now, there's something else that had come up, and it actually brewed a lot of controversy. And
Yes.
I'm talking about evidence that was brought out by different media stations that had claimed that 10,000 children are abused by sex tourism in Kenyan town. And in
Yes.
this case, we were referring to Mtwapa in Mombasa.
Yes.
And I think there was even an international claim that these children were being paid under $1 or $1 per day for or some of these things. And you went ahead and actually found out that that verdict was not your verdict was not proven.
Exactly, yes.
And the explanation is that the 2006 study that the claim was based on had significant flaws. What kind of flaws? What did you find out?
Well, it took quite a bit of work even to get to this 2006 study. This began when, in March of this year, Citizen TV published a story with this headline, and it's run in other media stations. And so what happened was that we decided to start looking, and they very quickly told us this was the report they found. So once we got that report, we asked the authors, okay, where did you get this number? So that was a Dutch organization called Terre del Om. And what Terre del Om told us was that it was another report, right? But when we looked at that report, the place was called, the African Child Protection, an organization dealing with African child protection. What we found was that their report dealt with Nairobi only. It had nothing to do with, the coast, had nothing to do with Mtwapa. So what then we did, we contacted them and they told us the right report. They told us this is where the right report is. So we checked that report, and this was how we came to this 2006 UNICEF report. It was authored jointly by UNICEF and the Kenyan government. So, and that report was titled The Extent and Effect of Sex Tourism and Sexual Exploitation of Children on the Kenyan Coast. When we looked at it, what we found was that the findings were that some 10 to 15,000 girls living in the coastal areas of Malindi, Mombasa, Kilifi, and Diani were involved in casual sex work. Up to 30% of all 12 to 18-year-olds living in those areas. Immediately now we know that that 10 to 15% is in all those 4 towns, not just the tiny Mtwapa, which was the headline. And then from there, we wanted to know how they had arrived at this estimate. One of the things we noticed was that when they approached, when UNICEF approached the government for permission to do the study, they were refused permission to survey children in school. So, because they wanted to survey school children, because it's a very big population, and that would have given a strong quantitative edge to their work. That was denied. So they had to find a way to count, some other way to compensate for that. They also did what are called key informant interviews. So these are people who are in the community who they asked about child sex tourism. They had focus group discussions with people who have specialized knowledge, NGOs who deal with child trafficking and so on. They went outside bars and spots of entertainment where a lot of this vice happens, and they recorded the comings and goings every hour. So they would sit and observe, and they would see how many tourists are going with how many kids, and they would kind of write it down. And then they had, they gave diaries to young children who had admitted they were involved in sex tourism, and these young children wrote down their experiences. But what happened was that the enumeration, the counting, was hampered, right? Because it was only in certain particular places. And so what they did was they estimated based on, the population of the area and what they called triangulation, that, that 10 to 15,000 children were involved. Now, what we did was we asked statisticians about the strength of this methods. And what they all told us was that the study was very strong when it came to finding out about the factors that lead to child sex tourism and how children get involved and their experiences, but it was not a very good study when it came to finding out the number, calculating the number. It was not well set up for that. And in fact, one did say, from the University of Minnesota, he said that this study, the numbers are not well estimated. The number could be 10,000. we in no way rule out that the number could indeed be 10,000, but the methods are just not the ones that are proper for estimating a number, because what they would have needed to do was essentially, if you're going to estimate a big number, you need a sample, right? And then from there you try to estimate your population, and they were not able to do that properly. You remember the government said they can't go to schools. And what school children would have done, that's a nice big sample to start with. It would have been very helpful, and they weren't able to do that. So the study is a 2006 study, right? Remember, we're in 2018, it's 2006. And also that it was not set up well to estimate numbers. Although it does give a lot of qualitative feedback, you can find out a lot about the lived experience and what people who are engaged in this vice have to suffer through. But in terms of estimating numbers, it had some shortcomings.
Okay, so clearly one of those that actually did not hold water, and a lot needs to be done to actually explain that number or even find the actual numbers in as far as that is concerned. But we cannot negate the fact that there is an issue when it comes to child sex exploitation, but the numbers need to be proven and more research done. Well, we are fact-checking some of the claims that have been made in the recent months, and before we continue to one other that actually affects Nairobi directly, just to that story that was headlining yesterday after Mombasa-based Nation Media Group journalists were attacked and arrested as they were trying to film a construction site in the North Coast that as they said, was actually the developer, private developer, was constructing a hotel blocking the beach and reclaiming sea land, and we were asking whether he had the relevant permits to do so. That got our reporters into a lot of trouble, but those are the pictures actually coming from the same area. Just to remind you and to put you up to speed is that our journalists were actually, excuse me, released, and various institutions are following up on that incident yesterday. But just pictures coming from that building that is being constructed near the sea land, and this has brought a lot of questions in as far as how come that was given a go-ahead and yet it's right in the sea land. And we have the CEC for land, that is Mombasa County, who is in the area trying to see what is going on and, of course, inspecting the building that has been brought up in that area. This is in Shanzu, and those are live pictures coming to us from there. Just a reminder that our reporters yesterday were attacked and arrested because they were trying to find out why exactly that building had been brought up on what is being said to be public land. So as you can see, and we are being informed that there's still work going on that building and in that building. Those are pictures coming from the rooftop of the same. We've finally been able to access the building, and as you can see, it is very, very close to the ocean, which is bringing to question how it was even given the go-ahead to do so. Environmentalists, conservationists are saying this area is also very well known to be a turtle bay, and this would definitely go a long way in disturbing the ecosystem that supports the same. And as you can see, the proximity to the ocean is really, really close. So we are keeping an eye on the same, even as both the county and, of course, we have been informed the IG also said he will be looking into the roughing up and the arrest of the NMG journalists. As we speak, I am informed that the CEC land Mombasa County and the foreman of the building in that Shanzu, which is said to be a hotel, coming up in a closed-door meeting, and they'll be coming out to speak to the press as when they are ready for the same, and we'll be giving you details coming from that area. So again, those are live pictures coming from Shanzu, where NMG journalists were actually beaten and arrested, taken to Bamburi police station for recording statements, but they were released later and they were taken in for filming the hotel being constructed very close to the sea land. And as I mentioned earlier, the CEC, that is lands in Mombasa County, and the foreman of that hotel being put up in a closed-door meeting, and we'll be giving you details of our meeting as and when we receive it. For now, we take a short break right here on NTV Today. We'll be back with more fact-checking and other stories. Stay with us.
This is NTV.
Well, welcome back to NTV Today. My name is Gladys Gachanja. We have a lot lined up for you and following up on different stories across the country. And one of them is the first annual Kajiado Governor's Scorecard that is being held in Kajiado at the senior vocational training. I believe we have pictures of the same where the host governor, that is Joseph Olelenku, will be hosting various governors from across the country. And some of those expected are Joseph Nanok Turkana, and of course he is the chair of the COG, Stephen Sang from Nandi County, Moses Lenol Kulal, governor of Samburu, Mohammed Kuti from Isiolo, Francis Kimemia, Nyandarua governor, and Samuel Tanai, Narok governor. Some of those governors expected to be part and parcel of this first annual Kajiado Governor's Scorecard. An interesting one because it is the first to be held in Kajiado. Well, those are live pictures coming to you from Kajiado Senior Vocational Training, and we are following up on the same, and we shall be bringing you live pictures and speeches from that event. Live pictures coming to you from Isinya in Kajiado County, to be exact, the senior vocational training where the first annual Kajiado Governor's Scorecard is going to be availed. And of course, that is by the host Governor Joseph Olelenku. As you've seen, various leaders are already in attendance and will be crossing over to that event when they are ready. Well, back to that fact-checking mission right here on NTV Today. We have looked through some of those claims that have been made in the recent past. There's one that actually touches very close to Nairobians, and it has to do with Nairobi traffic. Now, there was a claim, and I believe most of the media stations and other outlets actually ran with it, claiming that Nairobi is the second most congested city in the world. The claim was that Nairobi is the second most congested city in the world. Well, the verdict, according to Africa Check, was that no data exists to support that claim. And of course, I'm still with Vincent Ngete from Africa Check. I mean, going and looking at the roads that we have to maneuver every day, we all believe that will be the case, and some of the measures were even put in place to get rid of some roundabouts, to close off some, to make sure that there's flowing traffic. But then again, you went and did your research and found out that the claim was unproven. How?
Yes. Well, like you said, this was a claim that was circulating really widely, so we decided to ask ourselves if there was any evidence to support this claim. So what we did was we got in touch with the CEO of the website itself, where these numbers were coming from, because everyone who cited it was citing a particular website called Numbeo.com. It's a website based in Serbia, and this was consistently being cited for traffic statistics, traffic jam, congestion. And so what they found was that Nairobi was the second most congested city in the world in 2017 after Calcutta in India. So we wanted to find out if there was any proof to this claim. So we went to the website and we had a look at it. And the CEO of the website told us when we asked him that in 2017, the traffic survey, because this website has many surveys for cost of living and other things, the traffic survey was only filled by 7,791 people in all cities across the world.
That's such a minute number.
It's a very minute number, given that we're a world of now 7 billion people.
Yes.
So 7,791. And when it came to Nairobi, we learned that there had been only 29 responses in 3 years.
Wow.
And in 2017, only 10. That's less than a matatu load.
Yes,
so,
it is.
Yeah, so the samples are really, really, really minute. And, but even if they are minute by our looking, we still consulted experts to tell us what is wrong with this sample. Professor Maya Lesosky from the University of Cape Town was very happy to help, and she said that when you have a non-random sample of 10 to 29, there is a possibility for a lot of noise, statistical noise. And the problem is that when you have a non-random sample, and she defined non-random in this case, because a random sample is a sample where every person has an equal chance of being chosen. If there is any bias in any way, it's not a random sample. In this case, the only people who can contribute to this survey are people who are interested in traffic jams, outside of traffic jams, and people who have an internet connection at the time.
Okay.
So that's not everybody.
Let's get off the roads just for a minute and to the beach. As you can see, we have live pictures coming to you from Mombasa, to be particular, Shanzu area. And this is a site where 2 NMG journalists were wrapped up even as they were trying to put on record of filming a hotel construction site that is reclaiming land in the ocean in Shanzu. As we know of now is that the CEC land in Mombasa County had a closed-door meeting with the foreman of that particular hotel, and this hotel is said to be erected by somebody who seems to be to have a lot of clout as far as it coming up in a place where clearly most are saying it's reclaiming land that is public and also affecting the ecosystem in as far as the turtles around that area are concerned. And NEMA has been put on notice as to how this happened under their watch, and a lot more is coming out of it. But in as far as security is concerned and that of our journalists, we have been informed that the IG has said he will look into the roughing up and arrest of our journalists, and as a company we are going to pursue the matter legally. So we shall be keeping you updated on the same. But now back in Nairobi and on to the congested roads. You said you went looking for experts to explain why this number did not make sense.
Yes. So what Professor Lesosky told us, so she's a biostatistician, and she told us that when a sample is non-random, it means not everybody can be chosen, and that biases the sample. So in this case, it's only people with an internet connection and people who are interested in traffic jams as a topic. When you leave the traffic jam and go to the office, do you think about traffic jams anymore? No, you probably do other things. But if you're interested in traffic jams as an issue, you're going to go to this survey and fill it out. But most people are not going to do that. Most people who are not connected to the internet are not going to do that. But a lot of these people are commuters. So you're not speaking to the full range of people who are commuters. You've left vast numbers of them out. So this does not represent that. We also spoke to Professor Zachary Gari of JKUAT. He's a transportation engineer. And what he told us was there is literature and a lot of research shows that when we do commuter surveys to estimate road traffic congestion, people often exaggerate, because they want the problem to be fixed. So subconsciously, they actually say it is worse than it is. So, commuter surveys are probably not the best way to estimate congestion. So you have to do something that actually measures the actual congestion. So the rate of movement, number of cars. Professor Gary was saying that the best way to do it, one way is to measure delay. So on a normal day, how fast do you move through a certain road, and on this day, how slow do you move? And you look at that change in speed, estimate that delay.
Allow me to stop you there again and back to the coastal region, Shanzu to be particular. I am told the CEC Land, Mombasa County, is currently speaking to the press about that construction happening in Shanzu, right on the beach. Let's listen in.
And run an inspection to make sure if those comments are actually true. So we have a big team with me. I have with me my chief officer, Architect Jaffa. We also have our surveyor and also our chief building inspector, Bwana Lugogo. So the aim of this inspection tour today is basically to look at three things. There's the routine, because we always do routine checks for any ongoing constructions, just to see if the architectural, structural integrity of the buildings are in accordance to the approval that was given. Secondly, is also about the issue that have been raised with the public, whether indeed there is encroachment into the sea, and we are here to determine that. So we've come with our surveyor, we have walked around the perimeter. They will do their mapping to see indeed what are the plot boundaries, where is the watermark, how the construction actually been able to observe that. And then once we get the report, we'll be able to come and advise that if there's any encroachment at all, so that we can work towards to make sure that that is brought back. We will also look at the issue of public access, because I know it has been raised that apart from encroachment also, there could be the possibility that there is a public access to the beach that has been blocked. So our surveyors will be able to determine all that. So for now, we have met with the developers and the contractor. They have been very cooperative. They have given us all we wanted, and they are conducting us on this tour. So what I want to say is that what I've said before, I think as the county government of Mombasa, I've always said that we've been pretty consistent, that we will always be jealously protect, our marine environment. We will protect all the public spaces. And indeed, you are sure this is the first time. We had an issue like this at the rehabilitation of Fort Jesus, but we were able to sit with them. And there are two other stops that we have also similar public complaints that we'll be visiting, and we have actually visited before. So what I want to assure the public is that we're addressing this, and they should not worry, because we're on top of this and we'll be able to take any eventualities. But I want to assure them that just like was mentioned yesterday, I saw some press statements. Of course, public is the beach is a public place in Kenya, and the accesses are also provided for in law. So unless if maybe there's a question, we can take those now.
Okay, Waziri, before checking the map, we have issues that can just be observed.
Yes.
Is everything right here?
Now, I was talking earlier, and I'll give an example, is until we actually determine. There is a previous case where we went, and I was talking to Manakelef, where some of these plots boundaries were put in the 1940s, 1930s. The sea levels have changed. Other places the sea has receded, others it has extended in. Now in this particular case we actually went and realized that the plots then were actually within their boundaries, but the high water mark has changed, and this is something that we're trying to communicate with the Ministry of Lands, that we need to revise this.
I'm asking in relation of this sand that has just been pulled from the ocean. There's a mountain of sand here. So
yes.
I don't know if it's correct.
So we want to see if this is part of the plot boundary or it's part of the public. Of course, if it's part of the public, we'll tell them to move it backwards. But I'll tell you that until we determine for sure, because we've seen other incidences, we'll look at where the plot boundary is. And the good thing is we have gone to places like this, because you see water is unforgiving. No one really in the right mind will build where there's active water. It will eventually come to naught. So we have actually been able to talk to these people and tell them, look, much as this might be in your boundaries, the high water mark has changed. And for public safety, putting a building here will in the long run result to risk. So we come with our engineers and advise them probably what distance to move back. So I gave an example of another place where we went. It was within their boundaries, but we asked them to move at least 15 meters backwards, because in order of public safety. So it's basically something that we need to relook at about the high water mark and maybe revise so that new plot boundaries are actually done.
Maybe how soon can we know whether there is an encroachment or not? And then number two, from your record, who owns this multi-billion property?
Because you first returned for the construction and you are aware as a county government.
And maybe still on that question, Waziri, As your engineers are coming here,
Yes.
are you placing an order for any construction to stop here?
No, we cannot, because for now we cannot. Because you see, you have to go with the law. Even where there's a violation, you must issue notices, you must have the report. So the first thing is to get the report. Once the report has come in, then we see if we can work with them to correct it. In the event that now we're at loggerheads and we cannot, that's when we enforce. Because we also do not want to Now, for me, Bwana, if I'm right, I'm sure with your team, maybe a day or two, they'll be able to have mapped all this, and then I'm sure by early next week they'll be able to give us the report. The building inspector also will check the nature of the buildings to make sure that they're okay. So we basically have the whole team to advise on that.
The owner of the building and the directors.
I cannot say the owner because that will have to search.
Of course, government, and you passed that, you approved for it to be built here. How many acres is it sitting? This building is it sitting on? And who are the directors? Who came to sort that approval from the county government? Because you must know that before you approve it.
Yeah.
You must know as a county government.
Yeah.
So who owns the
You see,
yes, the company.
If you look at the approval process, normally the one who submits is the architect. Then there is a company, or they say who is developing. So the name of the company, I'm sure there's a board there you can be able to check. But to check on the directorship, you'll have to do a search at the ministry, at the registrar. That's actually what I can tell you. Yeah.
That is something that you cannot tell when you were coming to do the inspection. You did not know that there were questions that who owns.
Look, I don't want to speculate. I think today we've come to look at the encroachment. Really, the ownership or the what does not really concern us. For us, we want to make sure is the public bit safe. Okay, is there an encroachment?
But it concerns the public.
Yes.
So we kindly want to know.
Yeah, so for me, let me comment on what is my mandate today. My mandate is to make sure that the public beach is secured,
I think
and also
he's asking in relation to what happened yesterday, where two of our colleagues were assaulted and beaten up. So there must be someone powerful behind the building.
So I do not want to speculate, because until you do a search and see that, and I think that is actually not relevant to today's discussion.
Yes, my last question was here. It is clear that the sand beach is being scooped here, and you right from where you are standing, it's not the same from down here. So is it clear that the sand beach is being scooped?
Yeah, what I've said is this is unusual. This is unusual because, I mean, you will not see something raised. But the question is it within the plot boundaries or on the public space? That's what we need to determine.
And are you able to say how many acres? How many acres?
I cannot be able to recall that. It will be in the report, and I'm sure we'll be able to give you. I do not keep that. The most important thing you need to know, I'm not here alone. We have people from NEMA and also WARMA. They can also be able to. So this is again a joint thing that we are doing. So they'll have the reports, we'll have our reports, maybe we'll sit together and see how best to be able to protect the public interest as regards to this construction.
So we can get a name.
Can we get the name of the maybe so that you can speak to
the NEMA, we were together in the initial meeting. Oh, here he is.
Can I say this?
No, you can say it.
We have just. My name is Stephen Wambua. I'm the County Director of Environment, Mombasa. We have just arrived. So please, can you give us time to do our investigation? I will come to you. NEMA will give you information before the end of the day.
But before this day,
yes,
you are not aware?
Aware of what?
Before the construction starts, there must be approval. Did NEMA approve the construction of this building?
Please, can you give us time? We'll give you information, full information by the end of the day. Yes.
Did NEMA approve this?
We got the information. We came to the ground. We are compiling our report. We are going to give you information by the end of the day. We'll give you information by the end of the day.
So you didn't approve?
I did not say that. We are going to give you full information about this property by the end of the day.
Maybe just to say on that, you know, anytime there's a construction, there's regular inspection. Because sometimes, even when an approval is given, there is a possibility that someone can go beyond the terms of that approval. And that's why we have routine inspection. So even though, you know, an approval was given, doesn't mean that the developer has actually followed that. A good case in point, and I believe you're there even at Fort Jesus. We did give an approval because we wanted the seawall to protect the port. the fort. But we did realize that they had gone beyond. So it is this regular inspection that will make sure that the terms of such approval are given. So yes, it might have been given. Has it gone beyond? That is why you were here to establish if they've actually gone beyond the mandate of vote. I mean, if you look at that approval, it will tell you what the do's and don'ts. You can do this, you can build here, do not do this, depending on where you are building. Now, those are the clauses that we'll be looking to make sure have they adhered to that or they've gone beyond that. So, like I said, we've just started. Give us a couple of days, we'll have a full report, and then we'll be able to know.
May I say something? Where we stand here, my name is Khalif Khalifa. I am the chair of Muhuri. Where we stand here, this is an elevated, it's almost 10 feet high compared to the rest of the beach. Okay? It is unusual for an ordinary investor to order the guards and rough up 2 photojournalists of the nation. This guy, in which NEMA and the county government is trying to hide, there is speculation that this hotel is owned by Ruto, the deputy president. That's why all these things are happening, and these two organizations are looking the other side. This work it's not a day or two. Yesterday, we saw a big tractor excavating sand on this place. If there was a regular checkup, they would have known this long time ago. Now, this place is owned by somebody who's very powerful, okay? At a time when the president is spearheading, okay, to kill all this illegality, land reclamation, and especially NEMA, which approves these things. Now they're in the hot soup. The president has ordered whoever appended a signature on the legality should be taken to court, and in fact jailed. This is our land. If I have to come with my family, I want to walk where I am now. But here when this hotel is open, we'll not be able to walk here. Now this becomes private. This is our concern. And we want to know, the hotel must tell us those guys who assaulted this photojournalist. We want their name so we can go to the police. These people must be arrested. You cannot assault people who are doing their job. This hotel is not owned by somebody normal. No, otherwise they would have never done such a thing like that. Let us not beat about the bush. These things appeared from yesterday, and I was hoping these people must come here with full information. Now, everybody, we don't know. There is nothing we don't know. It's because they're hiding. Law is equal to everybody. It must be applied so, for God's sake.
I think what we want to add, clearly, as you can see, just from a layman's point of view, how the land has come, how this specific area is raised, and how it goes on further ahead. So that is already, from a layman's point of view, a concern that needs to be addressed. And the concern is not because of who is the owner of this property or for any other reason, but this is a public area. There is no private beach in Kenya. So all beaches are public accesses. They should be accessible. This is also a marine area. Turtles come to nestle here and they do all that. There is no way a turtle will be able to come up 10 feet high to lay their eggs. So these are genuine concerns, and even the people who are involved in the construction should put this into consideration. If this water comes in, it doesn't matter how you build, you pile up this soil, it will be taken away by the water. So these are genuine concerns, and we are asking not just the authorities, that's the county government, NEMA, and all responsible, but also those who are constructing the building, to consider the public interest and to consider marine life, and to know that in Kenya there is no way you can have private beach for you to do as you please. This is a country that has laws, but a beach must have access for every person, and no one is above the law. I think that's the message that we want to send out to everyone out there.
Maybe for a closing statement.
Yes.
I know. Pardon? Let me just give a closing statement. I think we could be emotional. There could be issues running down and quite deep. But I think that, please, I will ask everyone. I think the county government, like I said earlier, we have been pretty consistent and our record has showed. We have been at the forefront of protecting this. And sometimes we've stood single-handedly as a government. And I'm sure even Bonakhalef will agree to that. We cannot, we have really nothing to hide. Our interest is to protect the public. Like I said, we have come here today. We have public complaints. So many other cases we've done that. So much as there's emotions, there could be, a lot of feelings coming into it. Let's give the experts the time to work, because at the end of the day, we are clear that the public spaces must remain public spaces. Public accesses must remain public spaces. And I think that is the key, foremost, consideration that we're here today.
Maybe the last
so, please, let's give them time. I've told you the surveyors are here, our building team is here, NEMA is here, Warma is here. Please, I will ask you that.
The last question.
I want to tell the public that we have the interest in the heart. So
when was the
let's
last
stop this
inspection
speculation.
By the county government?
If you realize, last year, sometime late last year, we actually came here and intervened on how they are disposing the excavation sand. So I've told you that it's not the first time the government is coming in, and you did realize that that stopped. So there is a record, because when we come there, we looked at their disposal and we told them, look, you have to correct the way you are disposing, and that was corrected. So we've come here today, we look at it, and if there's something to be corrected, it will also be corrected. So let's not speak with a lot of emotions, because I think we are all in this as public interest, whip up things, but
now,
yeah.
As you wait for your officers to come and investigate, will work continue or you will stop it until the report is?
No, you see, specific works like the buildings which are going on, it's a routine check. If there's something that needs to be stopped, they'll be told how to correct it. Here, the issue is, I've said they'll take maybe a day or two. You can see there's no construction here. It's probably the sand to be put back. Now, once we are able to establish that, then we'll come and tell them,
But Bonazire, at least what you could have done, just remove this thing here now. This sand where it elevated, it should be removed now, please.
You see, that's what I'm saying is, you have to realize that the sea line has shifted. So it will take a day or two, we'll be able to determine that. So I think that the position is, it's very unfortunate if you actually, the county government, from the governor himself, even at the forefront of this. So this is not an exception, and we'll play our job.
Okay, we're together.
Any other question?
No, we are
Colonel?
okay. We are okay.
We're okay?
Yes, thank you.
So allow us to do the inspection.
Sure.
Pictures coming from Shanzu in Mombasa County as the CEC Land Mombasa County was addressing the media following concerns around the building or the hotel that's being erected very close to the ocean, and of course a lot of questions surrounding it. And his name Edward Nyale, and he says the reason why they were visiting the area was actually for a routine inspection to make sure that the structure is being put up as should, and by the the go-ahead that was given by the county government. And of course, encroachment of the sea is a question. That's something else they are looking into. And of course, the fact that there was uproar that there would be interference with public access to the beach is also one of those things they are looking into. Both NEMA, Warma are also into, and they have said they need a bit more time to look into any of these allegations and if any of these are affected. And it is interesting that names have been put out there in as far as who owns the building, and of course and people are still asking as to who gave the order to rough up our journalists, and that is something we are still following up on, and we'll keep you updated on the same. Well, back to that fact-checking mission, and as we drew to a close, we were talking about the Nairobi traffic. It had been said it is the second worst in the world. We have established that was not the case, but there is a glaring issue in Nairobi. There is terrible traffic. So maybe from your research, what is alluded to this?
Well, clearly Nairobi's traffic is a problem. One of the experts we spoke to, Professor Gary, did say that there are certain things we can look at, such as, the fact that Nairobi's roads have long had a radial design. That means that Nairobi is at the center and all the roads lead to the middle. And how do we make sure that our land use creates different demand outside the city so that people don't keep having to come? He said that was a very big problem. And he also mentioned the fact that a public transportation system needs to be efficient. So, you have big buses that can carry more than 100 people plus, and that can really solve, the transportation need problem. One other thing we did note was that there have been a couple of big studies on traffic congestion that have been done. And one as late as last year did not include Nairobi. It was by a global firm called INRIX, and they surveyed 38 countries. South Africa was the only African country. They had millions of data points because what they did was they used data from GPS devices that are located in cars. And so they were able to use that, and these GPS devices are obviously showing the location of the cars as they move, and so they can time these cars as they move and figure out the rate of congestion. And they also buy data from other sources. But not a lot of data from Nairobi can be acquired using these sources, or even any other African city, except those in South Africa, Johannesburg, Cape Town. So those ones are featured in the survey. In 2011, there was a study done by IBM called the International Commuter Pain Survey that put Nairobi 4th out of 20 cities. But again, there are only 20, so it doesn't give you a global picture. And when we think about cities in Africa like Lagos, are we saying our traffic is worse? This doesn't tell us in terms of measuring proper traffic. I mean, there are cities like Mexico City, massive. Are we sure our traffic is worse than that? There are cities in Brazil like Sao Paulo and Rio where people use helicopters to escape the traffic jam. So are we worse than all those? This doesn't prove that. And so there is not enough data to prove that Nairobi is the second worst congestion in the world.
Any indication whatsoever if maybe it is how it's faring continental-wise?
No, we were not able. Maybe we were not able to find after looking for a good long while.
Yeah.
So we are constantly looking for studies, and if one comes out, we'll look at it.
Okay, so again, if we need to verify, that will be africacheck.org.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. We've been speaking to Vincent Nya, the Deputy Kenya Editor, Africa Check. Thank you for your time in helping us debunk some of these claims that have been made over the last couple of weeks and months. And it will be interesting to follow up on some that come our way, even as we pursue different stories and situations along the way. Well, for now, remember the demolitions are still on. The governor of Nairobi, that is Mike Sonko, said they will come down. Those that are on riparian land will come down, and that is an exercise that has been given support by the president. That's President Uhuru Kenyatta, and he has said he will not stop until all the buildings that have encroached on public land and those that are on riparian land come down. And speaking of which, I am told our anchor here at NTV and reporter, that is Ken Mijungu, is actually going about the city and pinpointing some of those that have been said to have a notice in as far as when they should be bringing down their buildings, or this will be done at their cost. And I'm told one is 14 Riverside that has been targeted for demolition. Ken Mijungu now joins us with the latest. Ken?
Right, thank you very much, Gladys. And indeed, we are at 14 Riverside, one of the buildings earmarked for demolition. Now, this is one of the complexes right here in Riverside that cost a lot of money to put up. In fact, it's one of the complex buildings right here. Very expensive. It's said to have cost tens and hundreds of millions and probably billions to put up. There's several suits here, Gladys, but of interest is where we are currently. And we are where the river is flowing. You'll just see shortly the river that is just next to the last building of 14 Riverside. Now, if you look at the measurement, they tell us the requirement here was that the river must be at least 6 meters away from the last building of 14 Riverside. And just adjacent to 14 Riverside is another development which looks like it's residential buildings on our left, on our right side. But let's talk about 14 Riverside, because this is the point of interest. Now, the reason why this has been targeted is because it's said to be on riparian land. And if you can see, the river just flows between these two main complexes. That's 14 Riverside and the one adjacent, which we're not clear of the name. But as I said, it looks like residential buildings. Now, the controversy is how this came to be here. And this afternoon, we've gotten a statement from Knight Frank, which is the property manager of this building. Gladys, I just like to read it as you see those pictures right now on your screen. Our attention has been drawn to the article published in the Business Daily on August 17, 2018 on page 6, as well as mentioned on broadcast media and other news platforms, alleging that 14 Riverside development is targeted for demolition. We wish to state that no notice has been issued to this effect, either to Cape Holdings Limited, the landlord, stroke developer, or Knight Frank, the property manager, by any of the authorities, including the county government, National Environment Management Authority, or Water Resources Management Authority. This notwithstanding, we wish to state that the development is not built on and hasn't encroached on any riparian land. The development acquired all the requisite approvals prior to the construction from all regulators. It also has the required occupation certificate and is compliant with all regulatory requirements under Kenyan law. In a letter dated September 11, 2009, WAMA granted the approval to Cape Holdings following a site inspection and perusal of the environmental impact assessment report and building plans to embark on construction and leave 6 meters of the riparian zone from the edge of the river. The development is therefore fully compliant with all regulatory requirements and does not warrant the alleged demolition. Now, from the statement, Gladys, what we are getting from the statement is that they sought and got approvals for the buildings that you can see right here, and of course that's the way they came to have this building. And also what we get from the statement, Gladys, is that they have not been issued with notice of demolition or evacuation, notice for them to leave here and allow the authorities to bring down this building. So the dilemma is that without that notice, they don't know, and they are contending that the whole of this area, Gladys, is 6 meters from the river, and you can see the river is comfortably flowing past the building to the other side. And they're saying, as far as they are concerned, this is not riparian land. They have left the edge. In fact, Gladys, to be honest, apart from the fence where we are, you can see the river and the fence, and the last building is more than even 6 meters. But now the contention probably is this wall that is quite next to the river, and with the vegetation right here, it looks as though if this river was to swell, it will even get to this fence and to the parking, which is used by Dusit 2, which is a hotel, and the office blocks just next here, Gladys. So as far as we are concerned, this is a statement from Knight Frank, which now they're saying that they've not been issued with that notice. So we'll wait. They are not willing to appear on camera, at least not now. They say they have just seen this on the media and they'll treat it as media report. When they get conclusive reports or notices from the authorities, then they'll be able to do something. But as at now, Gladys, they tell us that they have not gotten any notice from any of those authorities listed here, including the county government. But the reports we have and was reported on Business Daily is that this is one of the buildings that has been earmarked for demolition, and the reason is this riparian land, which is the river, and which they should have left at least 6 meters from it. Gladys?
Thank you, Ken Mijungu, speaking to us from 14 Riverside, one of the buildings that has been earmarked for demolition. Of course, from what he has read to us, a statement from the management of that building, they say is that the building or development of the same, they say, well, the development is not built on and hasn't encroached on riparian land. The development acquired all the requisite approvals prior to construction from all the regulators. Well, that has been the case. Many of those buildings that have been earmarked for demolition. So it will be interesting to see which twist this particular one will take. But clearly, as Ken Mijungu was showing us, it is very close to the river. And that is something that we'll also be following up in as far as the demolition of those buildings that are encroaching encroaching on public land and riparian land is concerned. But on this point, or at this point, we go beyond the borders. The infantry battalion of China's 4th peacekeeping force to South Sudan resolved a conflict breaking out among refugees in South Sudan's capital, Juba. At about 9:30 Tuesday, the Chinese peacekeeping force received a report saying that refugees were fighting with hacking knives beside the 3rd UN refugee camp, with one refugee severely injured. The Chinese peacekeepers immediately rushed to the scene to save the injured refugee. Governor is Joseph Olelenku, Governor of Kajiado County. Let's cross over to his senior vocational training.
Kajiado, mbunge mwenyeji, Mheshimiwa Peris Tobiko, mbunge wa Kajiado Magharibi, Mheshimiwa Sunkuya, mbunge wa Kajiado Kaskazini, Mheshimiwa Manje, wajumbe wa County Assembly walio hapa, na pia ninatambua wageni waheshimiwa wengine walio hapa. Mama Ngaiseri nimemwona hapa, nimeona na County Commissioner yuko hapa, na mke wa senator wetu, wageni waalikwa, wananchi wa Kajiado, hamjambo? Bwana asifiwe. Enda suba bogen. Sijui kwa nini hatuna furaha. Habari zenu? Mheshimiwa Gavana, kwa muda mfupi mno niruhusu nitambulishe County Assembly walio hapa, members wetu ambao wako hapa leo. Hii ni hafla muhimu kwetu kama county, na assembly iko hapa kwa fujo mno, na ningependa nichukue fursa hii niwajulishe kwa dakika mbili. County Assembly tafadhali. MCS. Kweli kabisa hawa ni watetezi wa wananchi. Grassroots. Hawa ndio wako kwa grassroots. Mheshimiwa Gavana, unaona kwamba assembly wako hapa, na tumekuwa hapa maana hii ni hafla yetu. Kwa sababu ya muda nitawajulisha moja kwa moja majina yao, alafu wataketi. Na nitaanza kule mwisho. Mheshimiwa Lalaito, tafadhali nikitaja jina lako you wave and take a seat, kutoka Kajiado South na chair wa Women Caucus. Mheshimiwa Waishanguru, mjumbe kutoka Ngaimoronya Ward na naibu majority leader. Mheshimiwa Grace Salau Parsitau, nominated or specially elect. Mheshimiwa Grace Munei, specially elect. Huyu ndio ile kwaya gavana walikuwa wanaimba wanasema wametoka kwa Baba Blessing. Huyu ndio Baba Blessing. Anatoka Lodoklani, anaitwa Mheshimiwa Mbada. Mheshimiwa Sein kutoka Purko, specially elect. Huyu ni Endege, Mheshimiwa Endege kutoka Gwasongidongi, elected. Na huyo anaitwa Metoi, mheshimiwa kutoka, huyu ndio MCA wa governor nyumbani. Makofi. Na huyo ni Ndovu, mheshimiwa Kimiti kutoka Poka Kinyawa Ward. Mheshimiwa Ngogoyo, specially elect. Na leo una nafasi ya kuhost rafiki yako tunai hapa Kajiado. Yeye anapenda kwenda Narok sana. Mheshimiwa Lengete, mjumbe kutoka Rombo Ward kule Loitoktok. Mheshimiwa Yvonne Tongei, specially elect. Mheshimiwa Ngitinyo Lelesere, Dalala Kutuku Ward, Kajiado Central. Bob Male, tunamuita Sungura. Mara ya kwanza gavana walipokuwa sworn in, ngoja kidogo, nikaulizwa kama kwa standing orders ya bunge rasta atafanywa vipi. Lakini nikarule nikasema kwa sababu anapenda hiyo nywele na amefuga kwa muda mrefu, aachwe aendelee nazo. Sungura kutoka Ngong. Asante. Huyo ni Mheshimiwa Sawoyo kutoka Kiokonyoki Ward. Asante. Huyo ni Mheshimiwa Washuka, specially elect kutoka Kajiado North. Mheshimiwa Pere Generali kutoka Ongata Rongai, elected. Na huyo ni Chief Whip wetu kiranja wa bunge Njogu Kimemia, Kajiado North, Ololua. Na huyo ni leader of majority party. Majority yetu, chama ya majority ni Jubilee. Na huyo ndio kiongozi wa walio wengi, anaitwa Julius Moipai kutoka Mbirikani, Kajiado Kusini. Na anayefuata ni kiongozi wa walio wachache, Mheshimiwa Ladama. You can tell from the color of the shuka. This guy is from ODM. Na yeye ndio kiongozi wa walio wachache. Nafikiri walio mpa shuka walijua. Asante. Mwisho kabisa ni mwenyeji wetu hapa ambaye ni Olowasa. Gavana, kwa heshima yako nitamruhusu nusu dakika aseme jambo na aseme karibuni, kisha niseme yangu kwa dakika 2 na tumalize. Olowasa.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Joseph Olelenko, Your Excellencies, governors who are present, members of Parliament who are present, Honorable Speaker of Kajiado County Assembly, wananchi kwa ujumla, hamjambo. Bwana asifiwe. Basi, Your Excellency, ningependa tu kuchukua nafasi hii kualika wote na kuwapongeza kwa kazi mzuri ambayo umetuitia siku ya leo. Sisi tukiwa Captain Northward tumefurahi na tunakukaribisha kwa mikono miwili. Your Excellency Governor Olelengu, ningependa kuambia wananchi wote kwamba mtu wa kwanza kuunganisha Kajiado, kuleta watu wa opposition na kuleta watu wa serikali pamoja ni mheshimiwa wetu Governor Joseph Olelengu. Hakuna makofi jamani. Your Excellency, sisi kama watu wa Captain Northward tunafurahia yale maendeleo ambayo umetufanyia, ikiwemo swala la maji. Katika mji wa Isenya tumekaa miaka 5 bila maji, na wakati ulipoingia tuko sasa na bohol 3. Your Excellency the Governor, kwa sababu ya muda ningelipenda tu kusema kwamba sisi tumefurahia yale maendeleo umetufanyia, ikiwemo ile shule ambayo mtoto ametaja hapa ilikuwa inaitwa The School of Shame, ambayo ulikuja ukatoa watoto wale 950 ukampatia yaka 5, sasa unamjengea kuanzia darasa la kwanza mpaka la 8. Your Excellency the Governor, tunakushukuru. Na mimi naomba nikiwa area MCA wa hapa, tuko na yakari 2000 hapa, ikiwemo eka 50 ya Isinya Youth Polytechnic. Na mimi naomba kwa heshima yako Your Excellency, tunaomba tujengewe stadium hapa kwa sababu tunataka mahali ya kufanyia kazi kama watu wa Kajiado. Namba 2, Your Excellency, tuko na hospitali hapa Isinya ambayo tunaomba iwe upgraded to level 4, maana tuko na yakari 22 na tunaomba itumike kwa sababu ni mahali ya county. La mwisho, Your Excellency, ni hapa Isinya Youth Polytechnic. Tunakushukuru, juzi ulitupatia milioni 15 ya kufanya ujenzi ya bweni, ujenzi ya dormitory, ujenzi pia ya mahali ya kufanyia kazi ya workshop na madarasa. Lakini naomba Your Excellency, hawana maji. Naomba vile umeakanyanga hapa leo, wacha wapate bohol moja ili waone baba yao amekuja nyumbani. Your Excellency, tunakukaribisha na tunasema Bwana akubariki. Asante sana.
Asante sana Olowasa, Mheshimiwa Gavana na wageni waheshimiwa. Kwa niaba ya County Assembly ya Kajiado, napenda kuchukua fursa hii kwanza kabisa kukupongeza. Ni mara ya kwanza tumekuwa na hafla kama hii ya kuuliza na kuambia wananchi wa Kajiado kazi ambayo serikali yao imefanya. Sio rahisi wanasiasa kuitana ili wakuje waulizwe maswali. Mheshimiwa Lelengu na serikali yako, Assembly ya Kajiado, tunakushukuru sana kwamba umefikiria jambo kama hili ili scorecard yako na serikali yetu pamoja iweze kuwa inaangaliwa, na umefanya hii iwe hafla ya kila mwaka and every year. Kama tuna mark time, wananchi wataona. Jambo la pili, ninataka kukuhakikishia kwamba bunge la county tuko imara nyuma ya serikali yako, na ninafurahi kwamba kuna waheshimiwa governors kadhaa walio hapa wakiongozwa na chairman wa Council of Governors. Muhula uliopita, na ninafurahi kwamba Mheshimiwa Nanok yuko hapa, maana alikuwa governor wakati ule na baadhi yao, Governor Tunai alikuwa bado governor. Zipo county nyingi ambazo walitumia muda mrefu kwa vita kati ya County Assembly na County Executive. Ninafurahi hapa Kajiado, hata muhula uliopita tulifanya kazi pasipo vita, na zaidi wakati huu Governor Olelengu ameunganisha county hii, na mimi ninahakikishia wananchi wa Kajiado kwamba tunafanya kazi vizuri pamoja. Pamoja na hayo, haimaanishi kwamba oversight haitafanywa. Kuulizwa